Welcome to episode 209 of the Necronama.com. Throughout the month of October, author and editor Alex Woodrow is joining us as we take a deep dive into Guillermo del Toro's Cabinet of Curiosities. Today's episode, The Outside. So we're back here for the fourth episode of Cabinets of Curiosities with Alex Woodrow as our guest all the way through all eight. This, like I said in the previous episode, this was my favorite story so far. I had only watched up till here. I still really like it. I have a couple complaints. I've rewatched it now, and that always brings up problems and makes me complain about things. But overall, I just want to say I think that this is the one that gets to me because it's so current and it's so just universal. Like everybody has that thing in them where they want to fit in or they want to change something about themselves. And I felt like this could be such a cliche story. And I know some people online probably hated it or whatever, because that's how the internet works. And I really noticed how making it totally modern and totally something that we're all feeling all the time, and just things I worry about, like with my own daughter or stuff like that, I think it just hit me differently. And so I just wanted to throw that out, since I said before it was my favorite so far. I think that's why.
Weirdly enough, it's not my favorite necessarily, but it is by far the one that gives me the most disturbed feeling, right? And I feel I actually get this weird sort of vertigo, motion sickness, nausea from the whole experience of it. The way that it's filmed through that like weird fisheye lens, the way that everything moves, those really up close, up in people's faces where you can see every pore, are so disturbing. The way people touch each other, the way people chew, it's all these little details that give me this weird body horror, nauseous, sticky feeling. And I thought that's such a brilliant thing to pull together. And everything sort of contributes to that. The music, the angles of the camera are fantastic. And then obviously the story itself fits right into that. So, on my part, massive compliments for probably the episode that works together the most out of all of them in every single way. Not a single element was, thought of out of context of the story. And I really admire that. That's fantastic. And it makes me nauseous, which is amazing. Congratulations.
What about you, Don? How do you feel about this one?
This one, I'm trying to think of the best way to articulate this. And I was, as I was listening to Alex, I'm like, I don't know the best way to say this other than
I'm afraid for what's coming next.
No, I'm just saying like
I'm scared.
This story hits on not just the idea of the concept of beauty, right? And self-esteem, self-worth, but it also shows you an outside versus inside perspective. When you're talking about somebody's character versus their outward appearance, and then how their outward appearance won't necessarily match the inside and vice versa. And then even with not just with the individual, but you're also talking about groups of people, communities, housing, marriages, family, any of these things that we look at. I mean, even just a regular building, like, oh, it's so beautiful to look at. It's so great. But then you miss the issues with plumbing or electricity or anything like that might be plaguing it. Might have mold,
Oh wow! How do you know the process of how I bought my house?
But then you have
tweeted the whole thing. No,
where it's not necessarily the most appeasing or appealing outside, but on the inside, you've got to have like everything is up to date and modernized and things like that. And it becomes one of those things where you don't necessarily understand what you have because of the way the world is presenting other things as the way they should be, or at least the way that you're absorbing that these things should be, as far as like, oh, I should be friendly, I should be smiling, I should be pretty, I should be wearing these clothes, I should be, because even with the other bank tellers, the other bank tellers are so uninteresting because it just seems like they are elevating themselves by putting others down, or just talking about just mundane bullshit. And you realize, like, when I have a conversation with somebody, I don't want it to be, and I have talked with James about this, I don't ever want it to be a situation where we're having a conversation just to fill time, or we're having a conversation that's not about something that can really benefit, what we're working on, or building a relationship with somebody. Whereas you have some people who they go into a conversation and on a transactional basis, where it's like, what can I get out of this conversation? And not necessarily like, how can I engage in a good conversation? What can I get out of this? What can this person do for me? And I know James is probably thinking about the one incident where this happened, where somebody did that to me, where we were all sitting there talking, and this one random person walked up to this group and was like, "Oh, I heard you guys are authors and publishers, and I have this book that I'm really looking to sell." And what was weird is, she asked me, like, "Oh, what do you do? What do you do? What do you do? What do you?" And got to me, and I said, "Oh, I'm a writer, I'm a professor," and then I think then she turned to the other person we were with and was like, "Oh, I heard that you're a publisher." And I'm thinking, like, and I think James even heard me say, well, fuck you too.
He did. He was sitting right next to her and literally said that. And she didn't even notice that. That's how much she had moved on.
Oh, that's perfect.
This is pretty amazing.
Oh, that's beautiful. I mean, it's horrible, but in terms of the story, that's beautiful. I can't believe it. But then again, I can totally believe it. That happens all the time. Gosh, I was just ranting on Twitter about that today, about the transactional nature of, especially in our field, how we behave. But maybe that's just a limited view. I think that our field is worse than others, but probably everybody else is the same, in theater and music and the police, I don't know, and bank tellers clearly are the same, according to this movie. And I actually found a really interesting sort of counterpoint to these bank tellers, because I'm so fascinated by these women, hens being hens, right? We are clearly meant to look at them and think they're ridiculous. That's the purpose of these scenes with these hens. That's how they're written to be. But then again, I think we don't actually know how much they believe in the things they're talking about. We have no idea of any of their internal life. We don't know anything. The way that we see their conversation is actually through the perspective of this one woman who desperately wants to fit in, or maybe not even desperately wants to fit in. She slowly, gradually becomes more enthralled with fitting in, right? I don't know if at the very start she actually wants that. It just becomes something that she has to do because that's the new normal, right? And so, of course, we have this view of these conversations through her lens and through how strange and almost alien they appear to her, because clearly she has all these other interests, right? And I wonder, it made me stop for a second and think, how many of our conversations appear that way to others? Right? For whatever reason, people overhearing us, how many of them go, what the actual hell was that? Right? And I thought about exactly this episode when I was in the sauna with my sister the other weekend, and we were talking about our Romanian weird rituals, some of the darker stuff. For some reason, in a public sauna with other people coming in there, we felt the need to have a conversation about how one of our traditional sacrificial rituals is taking somebody's soul and putting it under your house so that their soul can carry your house on its shoulders and they have to walk around without the soul. And this person left the sauna, and only when they left, I thought, what did they just think of us? I didn't even consider that this person is overhearing this conversation.
She was going to be the sacrifice. That's what she was.
So it does make me wonder how many times we're the ones who appear to be impenetrable and impregnable, and even without wanting to, maybe create that sort of atmosphere that people want to fit in with us. It's a weird thought because I've never been that person. Like, I was a bullied child. I was never cool. I'm still not cool. But it is something to consider. You never know when there might be somebody looking in and thinking, I wonder what I have to do to belong in there. Right. And of course, I think I can speak for all three of us that we don't want to deliberately create that sort of situation. So yeah, that was what seeing those women being hens made me think of, that sometimes you don't even know that you're being a pack of hens.
Well, and I like that you brought up some symbolism that I really paid attention to the second viewing of this. The whole taxidermy thing, I swear I'm coming back to something you just said, but the whole taxidermy thing is all about how only the outside matters.
Yes.
You literally throw away the inside, right? And you were talking about the coworkers and how you only see them from her point of view. We don't know anything about inside of them. And I realize that's just another level of it. Like, that's just, this is the surface that we're presented with. We don't get to know what's inside, if anything's inside, or if they're hollow creatures. I don't know. But it's just fascinating to me how it even works on that level. I don't know if that's purposeful writing at that point, but it's just one of those things that immediately blows my mind and makes me go, damn, I need to write better than I do.
Yeah, I thought the same. That you need to write better than you do. That's what I mean.
Oh, that's what I was going to say. Yeah, I was actually going to make that joke, and I was
so
like, I better not. No, that's hilarious. And then when you were talking about how we start to notice people could be listening to us or something, I was sitting here thinking about how myself and my friend Scott Bradley, for sure, we will notice that, and then we will purposely say really weird shit just because we're like, if anyone's listening, like, let's make this a memory. Let's make them really pay attention from now on.
Let's give them something to talk about at their next gossip session with the hens.
Well, we even do this weird thing, like we were at the Imaginarium convention in Kentucky, and when we would walk into the hall, like the main lobby, we would just say random things to just see if anyone around was thrown off by it. And I don't know, I find that fascinating. And if anything, I think that's trying not to fit in. We're like, let's be so weird, no one wants to talk to us.
But the problem then becomes when you say something so weird that you end up getting someone who is genuinely weird.
Oh yes.
You're like, so I heard that you guys were doing a mayonnaise tossing contest upstairs. I was a 1987 world champion in mayo tossing.
And you're like, yeah, I'm just gonna go to the toilet real quick. I'll be right back, I swear.
That's okay. I got enough time to go to my room to go get the medals. I'll bring it right down.
Good God.
Well, okay. So speaking of fitting in, I've actually got a question for the both of you.
Yeah.
This question kind of backfires sometimes because some people just do not engage in that sort of thing at all. But I am curious, what is the stupidest thing that you have ever done to fit in? Just to fit in, if you've ever done that.
Man.
Like I said, some people just do not, and somehow even manage to go through their teenage years without. I don't understand those people. They're a mystery to me. But if you're somebody who has,
oh man,
I think the dumbest thing I've ever done to fit in was joining the Horror Writers Association. No, I'm totally kidding. I love the HWA. I just couldn't resist. Mine, I'm just gonna give Don time here, but my dumbest thing I ever did was I committed a crime, and I literally had two friends who were at war with each other, and I picked a side, and my friend was like, "Oh, we're gonna go down there and spray some shaving cream all over his windshield, and by morning it'll whatever." And I thought that's all we were doing, right? And then we got there. And he jumped out and instead kicked the windshield out of this car. and I didn't know what to do, and so I just drove the getaway car because I was like, I got to get the fuck out of here. But I did it because he was the cooler friend, you know, and I mean, I've made up for it since then, and that kind of thing. But yeah, that's the dumbest, worst thing I ever did, and I could have gotten in a huge shitload of trouble. And yeah. What about you, Don? You got something normal instead?
Jesus Christ. I didn't know we were admitting to felonies on the show.
As the former president would teach you, if they don't fully enforce the law, then nothing's been broken. All right, guys.
Well, or in the words of Cardi B, no face, no case. I didn't go that far. I would say that the things that I did were more problematic to me, in the sense of like liking some stuff that you don't, that you actually don't care for, you don't like, as far as like movies or music or anything like that. So it's typically that whole, well, I got to pretend to be somebody else to be in a relationship with this person. So it was typically stuff like that.
Yeah, I've done that one, definitely. It was around the second can of hairspray that I realized I'm not actually into hair metal and definitely not into the whole costume part of it. So yeah, I'm so familiar with that one.
Oh my gosh.
One of my silliest, like this isn't the worst by far. I probably shouldn't be talking about the worst ones on air, but
sure.
One of my silliest moments, like absolutely ridiculously stupid, is that I fully pretended to be vegetarian to my boyfriend for, I want to say, 2 years. But like, I was absolutely not. I had no inclination whatsoever. And yet somehow this person who I was spending 2 meals a day with, I had convinced myself that in order to be cool enough to date them, I had to be vegetarian, right? And once I started down that path, I couldn't back out of it anymore. So at some point, I actually got to, functionally actually being vegetarian. I was just, in my mind, I wasn't, but I was eating only vegetarian meals all the time at that point. That's how ridiculous it was, for absolutely no reason other than wanting to be cool to this guy, who it turns out could not have cared less. In hindsight, talking to him 10 years down the line, could not have given less of a crap. It was hilarious to find that part out. And I think it was really funny to him to find out that I was pretending the whole time.
See, well, that's the thing. Like, part of me, I was just picturing you like sitting in a dark corner eating a burger and like looking over your shoulder,
narfling down a piece of ham or something. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, the sneaking of the food. No, I was just gonna I was gonna point out basically that idea of you lose, I guess, with that age or experience, because you can be older and go through this, the idea that you don't realize until you get to a certain level of maturity that you don't need to be somebody that you're not.
Oh yeah.
And it's just remarkable. One where, especially to bring it back to this episode, The Outside, where you've got this character that, despite the way her life is, that's not enough for her. In the sense of, I have a partner who's loving and supportive.
He's the best.
Like, this is the nicest, because he's kind of like, oh, honey, we'll get this. It's like, oh, you don't need that. You're beautiful. I love you. It's like, and he basically cuts down those other women. It's like, you don't want to be like those hens at work. You don't want to be like them. You want to be you. You want to be. And when she has that moment of like, being me is not enough, like that cuts. Like, if you're at a certain emotional state, or you reflect on those times when you were not, or you felt like you weren't enough, like that hits, that resonates with you, because that's how we all, when we're going through that, feel like, I'm not enough. Like, this is, I suck.
Oh yeah. And what I love about it is that it is gradual, because something as silly as, putting on a face cream to clear acne or whatever, like, we've all done that. That's so entry level, it's so easy to imagine somebody going, well, okay, I'll just put on this cream to make my skin smoother or whatever. That's not a big deal. And you can totally understand. A lot of times in horror movies, I'm like shouting at the screen, why would they do that? And this time I'm like, yeah, no, that's a thing that people absolutely do, that I've done. It's such a normal entry point. And it's from then on that it just becomes increasingly more frantic and desperate. But I never had that moment of no longer getting it. Because that's the thing with these sorts of things, with these sorts of products especially, they do have a sort of addictive quality. That sort of spiraling out of control genuinely does happen to a lot of people. Especially with like, I don't know, have either of you ever bought a sort of telemarketing beauty product or fitness product or anything like that? Or at least you must have seen the ads for them, right?
Oh yeah, we've seen the ads.
John is laughing in the corner. Yeah. So my mom used to buy basically every single telemarketing, fitness, and slimming product on the planet. And it started with just one thing, right? Like one of those things that you attach to your stomach and like it sends electrical impulses.
Oh, I remember those, yeah.
Right, those. Which seems harmless enough, right? You sit in a chair, this thing massages you for a bit, and you're supposed to look better. Whether or not it works, you're out some cash, no big deal. It's just that then that turns into, well, okay, maybe this product didn't work. I'm going to get this new and improved model. And then you find out that those are a sham. However, there's this other one where you're standing up and it vibrates your whole body, and that one definitely works. And that's how you end up being addicted to like telemarketing products. And they're designed to do that. The ads, the way people talk to you, everything is so studied. Every single word that they say is more carefully curated than any of our short stories, I'm sad to say, and probably more effective, which I thought really cool in the way they represented it in this episode. Like, you know, it was not only perfectly curated, it was speaking to her directly. And that's just an exaggeration of what it actually feels like in real life. When somebody says, you know, are you annoyed that when you sit down, your stomach makes rolls? And a bunch of different people are going to go, hell yeah, I'm annoyed. And then you're giving them the solution. It does feel like they speak to you personally because they're designed, they're insidious, they're supposed to feel that way, they're deliberate. And the way they did that by having the ad actually speak to her, although I could debate their choice of actor, because the entire time I was watching that spot, I was like, man, that guy from Downton Abbey sure has fallen far. He's fallen on some hard times. He was like a duke or something, so I don't know. But yeah,
he's probably making more money with this ad. I mean, I saw how many she ordered.
Probably.
I did think he was an odd choice. Like I was just like, really? But I also liked him because he just had that, like they really got the vibe of that guy that is in the infomercials, you know, like, oh my gosh. And then just how they kind of made him look like either he'd had work or he like, you know, whatever. And then he's able to, oh, that's this cream that does it. It's all, you know, and man, I loved all of that. So while I thought it was a weird choice, I kind of loved it too.
Yeah.
When you were talking about the infomercials kind of speaking directly to you, I remember being younger and being like, why are they on for so long? Like I thought that was weird, right? Like I was like, when that get old, but no, it does the opposite. Like you're spending so much time watching it that you keep hearing the same things over and over again and you start accepting it as truth. And I thought they did a really good job of conveying that without lingering on it for too long as well.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely true.
And then I loved how it's a drug, you know, you start with a little bit, somebody gives you some for free. And then you got to start buying it. And then you're buying it in bulk because, hey, that's probably better.
And then the list of side effects. Like the side effects they listed were very reminiscent of some real world stuff. Like there's a line that I even wrote down because it said something like, Side effects may include disinterest in activities that you previously considered pleasurable, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's
Wow, that's
Ozempic.
good.
That's happening right now. That's exactly what people are doing, where they are taking this drug that's designed for diabetics, but they're taking it
Right.
off script, off what's it called, off prescription.
Yes.
There's a specific, when you're taking it not for the thing it's intended for. So you guys probably know it's this drug that's absolutely wonderful, and it works when your doctor prescribes it to you for diabetes, and it helps people, good stuff. But whenever people are taking it for beauty reasons, they end up with some really weird side effects, because that drug was tested and designed for a specific group of people and not for another group of people. And one of the side effects that people who've been abusing it came forward with and ended up with was the inability to feel pleasure, which is super terrifying.
Wow.
Like, that is an absolute nightmare to me. And they, at this point, hope it's reversible, but it's so early on that they can't figure it out. So I found that really interesting. Like, it's almost like this episode, because the whole craze of using Ozempic off lies or off whatever just for beautification reasons is relatively recent. It's only about a year old, I think. So it's almost like this episode, which was, definitely written long before that, predicted that sort of thing. Or maybe just, it's happened before so many times and I just don't know about it. But yeah, I found that really interesting. And it's kind of ironic that one of the effects would be exactly that. Like, you're doing it to make yourself feel better, to feel happier. And it cancels your ability to do that.
It's off-label. I just looked it up because it was making me crazy because I couldn't think of it either.
Yes, so, yeah. Off-label. Thank you.
So yeah, what were you going to say, Don? Sorry.
I was going to say you have that moment where you're flipping the outside and the inside, right? So you're sacrificing the good that's on the inside as far as like being able to have, have a pleasurable experience throughout life in order to have a quote unquote pleasurable exterior. Which, I mean, let's be honest. I mean, the way that I see it is, she didn't change. Like, there was no new her. You know what I mean? It's that false. It's that false. Well, I wouldn't even say it's a false belief. I would say it's more an issue of you have the placebo effect of like, this is going to make me feel better. This is going to do good things for me. And it could have been nothing more than just regular aloe lotion that was in the aloe glow. But because you believe it's going to work, it works. And I was watching Watermelon Man a few days ago or sometime last week. And it's this 1970 film where it's basically a body swapping film or Twilight Zone type film where a guy, he's a white guy, he's really bigoted, racist, sexist, homophobic, but he tans himself, because he's into health, right? So he tans himself and one night he goes to bed, he wakes up the next day and he's black, right? Because he's been tanning so much. But he goes out and he gets all these products. And I remember his wife, because he wants to lighten his skin back to become a white person again. And his wife simply says, well, maybe these products only work for you if you believe that they'll work. And I just thought it was such a funny line for her to say when these are just over the counter products, they're creams or whatever. Yeah. And she's hitting at what the issue is. You have to believe, you believe it works if you believe it works, and not saying that, you're going to come out lighter. But if you believe that it's working for you, then your perspective is going to change. The way in which you view the world is going to change. The way you view yourself is going to change. Just like we have with this, where she puts that lotion on. And as an outside observer, as an audience member, I don't see a change, but she believes a change has taken place. She's got, she's wearing different clothing. She's cut her hair. She's put on the makeup. that's
it's a
all stuff
haircut
that
and
she,
makeup. That's all it is,
yeah,
basically.
that's all that changes about her. Like nothing changes her on the outside. What you see is she's definitely changed on the inside to where she's accepting of her outside. Kind of like when she was taxiderming the duck, like you took all the old stuff out and you put some filler in. And I think that's what you're dealing with here.
Yeah. It's interesting that you mentioned this about, in the end, the change is just a haircut and some makeup and, walking straighter with a strut, basically. That's all it is.
Yeah, it's confidence.
It reminds me of this like trend on TikTok and YouTube Shorts and stuff where predominantly women, not only, but predominantly women will be showing their face in like full makeup, contouring, all the blush and highlights and things that I don't even know the name for. And then wiping all of that off, and it's a radically different person, which is super interesting to see because it's basically an art at this point. The things that they do with colors and shades and light and dark completely changes the structure of the face and what the person looks like. And of course, it's a bunch of guys replying, we've been tricked, we've been had. But the funny thing is that in the end, what's the actual difference between photo 1 and 2 is an investment of time and energy to want to do those things for yourself, right? And it's exactly the same as our main character here. She convinced herself enough that at one point she wanted to do that, wanted to get the haircut, which is an investment of time and probably money and energy. I can't remember, did she do it herself, the haircut? Probably. So at the very least, an investment of time. She took the time to do the makeup, took the time to clean up, to put on nice clothing, and felt better and had more confidence, which is so interesting because a lot of times that sort of energy to take that time, to take care of your body, to put on the nice clothing, to strut your stuff, that is exhausting to do. Sometimes you genuinely do not have the energy. A lot of time, most of the times, I genuinely do not have the energy. I'm a burlap sack person myself. Just let me walk out of the house in a band t-shirt. And it's just fascinating to me how much the difference is between having that energy and how the world perceives you when you have it and apply it to your own body versus not having it or choosing to apply it to something else. Radically different image, like radically different perception that people have of you. It changes everything. And of course, that's the main topic here. Like, should it change that much, really?
I mean, it's about whatever makes you feel better, right? But I don't know, man. I love all of this because for me, I keep coming back to her husband. I love her husband. Like, I know we're supposed to. He's overly perfect to make his piece even more tragic. Like, he 100%ly loves her for her.
Yeah. Do you realize how rare that is in horror, that we're shocked by it? Like, it stands out to us because that never happens in horror movies.
Absolutely. And then he's even further than he needs to be, right? Because we need to really feel that substance doesn't matter to her. Like, he would give anything to just keep her the way she is and have her be happy and have them be happy. Like, even when she's doing taxidermy, he's so like supportive of it and cool. And so I look at all of this and the changes that she makes, whether it's the aloe glow or just her changing her clothes and hair and stuff. And I just can't help but feel like he would have still just been like, hey, if that's what makes you happy, great, babe. Like, I mean, even when she kills him, he's so supportive. He wants her opinion on whether it's bad or not, so.
Definitely, he would have been, as long as she wasn't actively hurting herself. Definitely, he would have been. No, he is designed to be this perfect partner. He's wonderful in every way. And it's really shocking how wonderful he is. And that just makes her transition more complete when she ultimately taxidermies him and turns him into this empty thing that's all appearances. And she's happy with it. Right, as she walks out of the house, she is happy with that thing on her couch, and she waves goodbye and says something cute that I can't remember. But she's like into that whole fiction of him being there and watching television and everything is fine, and she no longer cares that there's nothing on the inside. I just thought that was like the ultimate example of how fully the outside has now taken over the inside.
It's crazy. But the one symbolism that I love most with all of this that I didn't really think about the first time I watched it, when she gives the duck as a gift at the Christmas party, it's rejected. So this attempt
that's true.
to give just the outside is immediately turned down. Like, they invited her. They didn't like,
oh man, that's so
like
interesting.
we didn't get like oh, you're the freak and we're bringing you to be entertained, or
No, they
that kind of
wanted
thing.
her involved.
Yeah, it doesn't feel like they were setting her up for a prank or anything, like she was legitimately getting the same gift all the others get. Like, they had actually accepted her for who she is. And rewatching it, this scene, I was just like, holy shit. She already has everything she wants. She has a husband that does this for her. Her coworker, friend, people accept her on some level, whether they totally get her or not. Like, and so all of this is even worse to me after rewatching this scene, because I realized she already has it all.
That's
because you don't know that you have it.
Yeah.
I mean, because what you're doing, you're gauging your reality based off of somebody else's, right? So as we talked about earlier, this idea that you got the inside versus the outside perspective, where she's on the inside of her relationship, but she's been being influenced too much about outside factors. So of course her relationship is not going to be seen as great, because he's a sheriff's deputy. He's not making a lot of money. Where she goes to the friend's party, and there's at least one Ferrari outside. They got a nice, big, spacious house. I mean, a house that typically, when you're watching one of those horrible TV shows like House Hunters, I'm only saying horrible because they'll have it's become a joke at this point where it's like, hi, I walk butterflies and my spouse does the weighs and measures for rocks just in this zip code. And our budget for this house is $3 billion. It's they have so much space for entertaining in this home, where they're having a Christmas party that's not like, oh, this is just our family. And what it's like, here are my coworkers that I'm bringing in to spend all this money on, to one, show them how well off we are, because I'm willing to bet that those sets, weren't, at the dollar store or any place like that, where it's like really cheap, really low product quality. We've got the money and we want to show people. So typically when you get around folks like that, you do question, is my life what it should be? Is what I have enough? And you have some people who are going to be more susceptible to seeing that their lives are not enough because somebody else has so much more.
It is a lot easier to realize that you're not exactly sure what you're supposed to want when other people tell you what they want so confidently. And then you're like, should I also want this thing? They're making such a big deal out of it. Should it be important to me? Yeah, totally.
Well, yeah, because James and I have talked about this before, because James hasn't spent an extensive amount of time in the American South. I unfortunately have. And that's nothing against the American. I love it here. The food is great. Some of the people are okay.
Unfortunately, is a word that totally expresses nothing against. Yeah, nailed it.
Don, I am trying to get to Buc-ee's one day, but other than that, I'm good.
Well, I mean, there's more stuff than Buc-ee's. I'll make a list, and I'll give you a list of things to say so people don't think that you're not, Where
are my tactical glasses?
That you're some weirdo. No, that would throw you off. They'd be like, oh, a Texan.
Wait, what are tactical glasses?
Just these weird Oakley glasses that people wear because they think that they're fighting a war that they're not fighting.
Okay.
Oddly, they sell them on an infomercial. So if I can find it on YouTube,
you're talking about
I'm going to send it to you.
You're talking about tax specs then.
Oh yeah, the even
I thought you were talking about the Oakleys that they put up on their baseball cap or turned backwards on their head.
No. The yeah.
Okay,
I'm gonna find it and send it to Alex.
Oh, it's going to be great. But I bring that up because culturally, as far as like if you have a larger area, a region, city, town, whatever, there are going to be these certain expectations that are there, right? So we are not a religious family at all, at all. And my mom, I mean, as far as like my wife, my daughter. But my mom will sometimes ask these questions like, oh, what about church? I'm like, we don't go. It's not happening. Like my kid wants to go when she gets older. Great. But then there's also these weird cultural expectations of like, not, do you go to church? The question would be like, oh, where do you go to
Which church do you go to? Yeah, that's the one we get here too. Yep.
And then you have something that I messaged James's wife because James was busy. I'm like, I don't need to bog him down with this. Let me show it to her. They sent home on Thursday, the school sent home applications to be in a beauty pageant, a children's beauty pageant. And my kid was like, she wrote at the top of it, please say no. And she was like, I have a form for you, because she thinks that every form that comes home is seeking approval, right? But she handed it to me. She's like, they handed these out at school and I really don't want to do it. And I looked at it, I was like, why the hell do you think we would let you do something like that? She's like, oh, thank goodness. Because I was like, you're not doing that. So this, nothing against people who are legitimately there. But there's the wrong crowd with that. But anyway, I'm saying that because obvious that she's picking up on some of those cultural pressures, at least in the local area, where it's like, oh, here are the things that you need to do with respect to your race or your gender or anything like that. And we look at her like
a normal thing that was done for her.
Yeah, she was like, I don't want to do this. Like, I'm assuming that there were little girls in her class that were excited about it, but just the idea that one, you got people around you that are excited about it, and then two, you have these forms being handed out at school, so it's almost as if it gets approved at some level within the local
place of authority.
I was heated. I was a little upset when I got, but I was so overcome with pride in my daughter and saying like, I don't want to do this, that I couldn't even get mad. So whatever email I'm going to send to the school has been delayed because I'm so happy that she was like, nope, sorry.
It is really wonderful that she has the strength and the insight, despite all of those peer pressures, despite the community being, in that direction, to just say to you, no, I don't want to do this. That's so huge, and not something every kid would necessarily be able to do. I don't think not every adult would be able to do, to be fair.
And that's the thing with Stacy. You see how this isn't something that she's been concerned about for a day or two. Like, she's been concerned that she didn't fit in for a while. To the point when I know the husband's, his real name is Martin, but in this her husband has this moment where he's kind of questioning is something going on? But it's not that it's something new with her. It's just something that she's willing to, I guess she's finally been pushed over the edge. Like, there's something that she needs to do to be more appealing to all these people that count. Not saying that her husband doesn't count, but her husband is going to be biased because that's your husband, that's your partner. They should not be swaying you from being who you are.
Yeah, hypothetically, they chose you deliberately.
Exactly. So my husband is biased. I can't tell him what I really want or what I really want to be, because he's going to, one, shoot me down, not in a negative way, but he's going to shoot me down because he's so supportive of me that I can't go to him to talk about this, because it's gonna immediately lead to, no, you're fine, you're perfect, you don't need to change anything about yourself, you're lovely, you're beautiful, hon, you're the smartest, most talented person I've ever met, right?
I mean, there is that element of I'm really familiar with this. I've done this a couple of times in my life, when you almost kind of know that what you're doing is kind of cray-cray, but you want to do it anyway, and you just steer away from people who you know are going to talk sense into you. So that is so
absolutely.
real, and I have done that in the past deliberately. I'm maybe not thinking of it in those terms at the time, but in hindsight, definitely being like, oh, so that's why I didn't tell this person, because I knew full well that they were going to talk sense into me.
Mm-hmm. Oh man,
Yeah.
I do that all the time. That's why I don't tell Don anything now. No.
Yeah, I know. Well, and there's a lot of good messages. I mean, there's an overarching message here, but a message that the two of you hit on earlier. Just the way the telemarketing is presented, or we could even talk about MLMs, because it's practically the same thing, right? I'm getting somebody to buy something that they may possibly not even need.
Mm-hmm.
But Keith, the husband, Keith's remark is like, they make you think something's wrong with you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And if that is not the majority of marketing,
yes,
like, you're not cool enough unless you drink this soda or smoke this cigarette. Because I remember the days when, you had cigarette advertising. You're not cool enough. You're not tough enough. You're not man enough. You're not woman enough. You got all these things that are going on. Like, even, I know this is going to sound like a weird segue, James, but I'm going to say it. Alex, this is going to be one of these quotes that James and somebody else is going to use against me in the future.
Okay.
Like the lynching thing.
I'm ready. I'm prepared.
I appreciate the way in which women's feminine products are now marketed, because I've seen the evolution in the US from the 80s, when I first started noticing this, to now. Because it's no longer about or even just going to the bathroom, because there's this one commercial, this one company that says, women poop, it's okay, you can talk about it, women poop, like, and I'm like, this is the greatest commercial ever. Yes. So you go from what is quote unquote taboo, right, to now thinking about it as, oh, if you want to be a real woman who takes care of her body, blah blah blah, use Tampax or use this. So you would see those ads in the 90s where they're talking about, you can still be normal. And I'm like, what's wrong with it? What the hell's wrong with a period? Like,
you can still do activities.
Yeah, you can still go swim and do this.
Still have a full life despite being a woman. Yes, I've seen those.
So those ads, and now the ads are kind of like, hey, these are the ones that you need, because I love how they're educating in these commercials now, because it's no longer about, hey, here's the skinniest, prettiest woman you've ever seen, right? As far as like this westernized version of beauty and whatever, like, here's stereotypical Barbie. Here's who we're putting here. Now you're seeing women of different sizes, shapes, different sexual orientations represented, different ethnicities, to where it's now you're seeing variety, you're seeing diversity, as opposed to what Stacy is saying, which is just one kind of, two kinds of women. The women that are popular and beautiful, and the women who are unpopular and ugly, or in her case, an ugly duckling who's supposed to turn into a swan, according to the commercial, which is great, because with the tie-in with the duck from earlier. But what you end up having now is products that are going away from there's something wrong with you, there's something wrong with you, something wrong with you, to here's how we can make you better. So those men's testosterone commercials, they do the same shit as far as I would say they're doing what women's products were doing 15, 20 years ago. And the women's products are way ahead, because like, we're not going to talk about how you can be a better, like, you are you. Like, here's a feminine hygiene product. We're selling it. This is what it does. We're not going to sell you anything beyond that. Now, there's companies that still do, but the men's products, the men's products are the company that's selling some of the men's products are taking advantage of that male inferiority that has been rising up in the last 20 years. It's always been there. But this idea of, hey, when you get into your 40s, your testosterone drops down, and you don't feel like a real man. And I'm like, what the hell is going on here? And then it continues on, and I think the commercials now are something like, well, take this because you'll have better energy, as opposed to just saying like, here's something to help with energy, here's something to help with sleep, blah blah blah. It's, oh, you're going to be more powerful in the gym. Oh, and in the bedroom, the ladies will love what you bring to the bedroom. I'm like, so your take.
Oh gosh, can we please not talk about what I bring to the bedroom commercial? We don't know each other that well.
So it's I think they've made leaps and bounds with selling to women as opposed to selling to women as products. They're selling to women as individuals.
It's far from perfect, but
it's still not there. It's still not there. But you're seeing like this switch.
Yeah, it does feel like they're swooping into whatever angle of the market that they're losing with women who are no longer as desperately buying all of the bullshit. Whatever percentage they lost there, they are definitely coming after men to fill that percentage. Absolutely. The men's cosmetics industry is a disaster, and it is fully what women's cosmetics were, 25, 30 years ago. And it is scary to see, and it's going to have such a long-lasting impact. Absolutely. That is fully what they're doing right now. And I don't think people still realize, even now, how significant the power of comparative, like me comparing my body to what I see around me is. It changes everything. It is absolutely life-changing. Because I consider myself a very comfortable person in my body, absolutely love it with all its flaws, super happy, super relaxed. And still, even from that position of relative security and privilege, I just feel like the moment I started seeing websites that sell clothing showing a variety of body types, now when I go back to ones, because there are still ones that have that specific model, right? That one model, that one body type. There's still plenty of those. Whenever I land on one of those, I don't even see the clothing anymore. I'm like, no, I can't be here. This is aggressive and it's causing me harm and I can't be here. And I feel like it's kind of like when you quit any sort of thing, you don't drink soda for a while and then you have a glass and you're like, wow, that's so sugary, right? You start to realize just how intense it was and how possibly bad it was for you after you're not doing it for a while. And that's totally what happened with me with seeing normal women, relatively, they're still models, but they're women that you can identify with, of all sorts of sizes and shapes, and wonderful. And then once you see that, going back is just terrifying. It's like, nope, immediately out of here. I don't even care what they're selling. I can't. It changes so much. And then, of course, it's easy to imagine how having the wrong kind of representation all around you and having only that kind, it's going to change the way that you see the world. It definitely did for a lot of us.
Yeah, because groupthink and cognitive dissonance take over, where it's you may know that the right answer is X, but those folks have so much control over what you're thinking that you'll immediately pick Y.
Yeah. And these days people use words like groupthink or collective opinions or stuff like that to sort of suggest, oh, you're just being stupid and following the masses. But it's not actually that. There's a biological factor in why we tend to congregate physically and in our thinking. This is a very real bodily function. It's not something you can just will out of existence. It takes community effort. It genuinely does, to get you to stop seeing the world in that way. It takes all of us participating in, not putting out those sorts of messages everywhere.
1000%. Yeah, because even beyond the health and body stuff, you still have, and you mentioned clothing as far as you got to wear this to, which again is just a weird concept. No, I wasn't talking to James about this. I was writing about it, where you look at the way in which clothing has changed, whether it was because of political issues, social issues, changing aspects of gender and identity, popularity, even things like just warfare, for that matter, how that can change clothing because of what's accessible, what can be made, what, rationing, whatever is going on. But you look at the way that even politicians or leaders of any country, for that matter, you look at the portraits of those individuals, how the clothing changes, and you can kind of understand how the attitudes of people changed over time as well. Yep. We're looking at old photos of, people 20, 30 years ago, as far as like what was popular and what was unpopular. And then you have a 5 to 10 year break, and what wasn't cool in, 85, all of a sudden is something that's cool. Like I grew up in the 80s and 90s. So when I see someone, not skinny jeans, it's known as the European cut here, where the
oh, I bet that's not what we call it.
Well, we used to call them oh gosh, it was flood something.
Huh.
Anyway,
I was shook myself if we call them the American cut.
But it basically it was when your pants come up just above the ankle, or at least they don't go below the ankle, but we used to call them like high waters. That's what they were. Not flood pants. They were called high waters. But like in the 80s and early 90s, if you were wearing high waters, people would laugh at you. And now it's like you look at them like, oh, that's the style. Like
that's the thing.
It's about an inch or two above your ankle, and you just think about how so much stuff can change as far as like the way that someone perceives that these are the right clothes to wear, or the right cut to wear, or the thing that you should have at the gym, where if somebody's wearing, I don't know, Gymshark clothing, or some other type of brand, and you immediately put them into the, oh my God, you just bought that to wear, you just bought that to have other people see you working out. And you have an identity that gets shaped because of that, which again, it's remarkable to see the way in which all the different ways that this is manifested, where people honestly think that what they're wearing is not enough, or is not good enough. Or even in the next one, when I looked at the suits, you look at the suits that people are wearing, like there's the differences aren't that much, but you're not going to wear something from the 1920s and the 2020s.
And people who care about these things, who notice these things, they're going to notice details that maybe for me it looks the same, and they can tell whether it's this year's or last year's, which I always found a terrifying skill. And then always the caveat is it depends on why you're doing this, because I really love and respect people who have a fascination for fashion, in terms of genuinely caring about like fabrics and where they're sourced and why a certain cut is this way and not the other, and caring about designing better clothing for the future and better fits and fitting more body types. And all of this is a wonderful market that I really hope flourishes in the future. It's just that there's always a dark side to everything. And, people who use it as, status to lord over others, to signify something, to signify their own importance, to signify how much better they are than somebody else. That's when it gets weird. That's when it gets scary. And I don't want to conflate like all of the cosmetics industry or all of the fashion industry is bad, not by a long shot. It's just that they happened to have a lot of bad people who took over a lot of their image. That's what happened. Like a lot of other industries, I think.
Yeah.
Well, I knew we were going to have a pile of conversations to have about this one. I was right. I even haven't asked you guys yet the last question that I wanted to ask, which is a tough one. Do we still have time? Can I ask you one last question?
Sure. You can do whatever. We can be here all day. Whatever you need.
So there's this line in the movie that I found really like pause-worthy and consideration-worthy, where she says to her partner something like, it's easy for you to talk because you're a man and you get to look however you want, or you get to look ugly and everyone still loves you. And I felt like that's such a deliberate thing to put into this episode right now, right in this moment, when we are exactly at the apex of having that, maybe at some point in the past it was true. I'm not sure, I wasn't there. But now I feel like we're at the apex at which that is no longer true at all, if it ever was. At the apex of the opposite, and of so much harm being caused to men because of the opposite belief, right? So I was just wondering, when you heard that line, how did you feel about it?
James, you can go ahead.
I guess for me, I view it both ways. I do think that there is a lot more leniency of what men can do and aren't expected to do. Let's go there instead. There was just recently this whole thing about Justin Bieber and his wife, and how she wore this super fancy red dress and then he wore sweats and stuff. And people were like losing their minds about it on the internet. And I was like, that's fascinating to me, because I feel like even 10 years ago, people would have, I mean, his outfit was a little out of social norms, so I can see why it would still come up. But if it was just normal sweats or shorts or whatever, I don't think anyone would have even noticed. And so I do think we're reaching a point where people are paying more attention, but I put that more on social media, on Tinder, anything where image is everything now, right? So you have to do these things to up yourself a little bit. But I also see the other side, because like I'm married, I'm happy, I'm not, out, whatever. I don't give a shit how I look. And I do feel like I can get away with that more than even my wife can. So I think that it's not gone, but I do think it's different, and people are paying more attention because, like I said, we're so focused on pictures and selfies and swiping right or whatever. I don't even know which way you swipe, but it could be right, it could be left, it could be up, it could be down, whatever. Like you gotta like present the same way that women had to present to get a man, right? Like now men are having to do that. So I'm stuck somewhere in between.
It's a very interesting point, and it is probably true that it applies more to single men than it does to others. That's totally possible. I think when I thought about it, all of this Andrew Tate stuff came into mind, because it's not exactly a one-to-one equivalent. It's not about the makeup, and it's not about who designed your dress. But if you look at it a little more broadly, his sort of cult, right? Because it is a cult, and it has an enormous number of followers. We are talking enormous.
Dawn and I are big fans of the Romanian police department. No, anyway, go ahead.
Me too.
and that pizza company.
Yeah, that's one pizza company. Super huge fans. No, but like if you think about it, he not necessarily he personally, but his presence and his ideology and his followers collectively created this set of rules of how to be a man that are absolutely the equivalent of 30 years ago rules of how to be a woman. You could not get out of the house without your lipstick, right? And now for them, it's some other idiotic thing, like you may not ever express to a woman that you like her or some bullshit like that.
If you want to be a top G, the thing is, when you want to be a top G, thing that you need to do is lie. You don't have to respect women. That's my Andrew Tate. I really don't care enough to invest the time in getting to know how he talks, because that's a lovely human being. I'm gonna go in a different route than the two of you.
Yeah.
I'm gonna say, well, I guess not completely different, but the idea of that standard for men has been there, right? So when you have, unfortunately, I watched too many clips of Andrew Tate to try and understand what the hell was going on when people were like, oh, there's this guy who's doing. It's like, this is weird. This is weird that you're following a guy who's okay with, abusing sex workers. Okay, all right, cool. That's on you, buddy. But the idea that there's these definitions about manhood, right? The issue is not that people are, the definitions are going away. It's the issue or the practice of following those definitions or concept or whatever you want to refer to it as. It's that you have people that are taking advantage of the emasculating of men or whatever they perceive it to be as. Because I've even seen how people were pissing and moaning about military commercials because it was, oh look, our military is having to have sensitivity, and the Russians are doing. I was like, do you not know what propaganda is, dummy? Do you not know what propaganda is? If Fox News is complaining about the fact that there are trans people in our military, that's because they're trying to rage farm people. Whereas when you had these commercials, it was like, oh, I miss the Marine commercial where he's fighting the dragon. Like, there are no fucking dragons. So there's your first problem.
Holy shit.
I really liked it because that shows what America is. It's like, there are no fucking dragons here.
You're not going into outer space to fight bugs. I'm so sorry to break this to you.
Okay, but in fairness, that is what America is. I mean, launching wars against imaginary.
Well, okay, I take it back. The dragon
and just
is a
trying
metaphor.
to take the resources once you're there. Yeah, I mean that makes a lot of sense.
Dragon is a metaphor. But the idea that if you're a man, there's so much less that you have to. So when people talk about male privilege, this is what they need to understand. We don't have to do shit. Like, we literally don't. It's not a thing that we're typically worrying about unless, as far as like outward appearance, unless we're single, and then it's like, oh well, now it's time for me to get in shape, or now it's time for me to get a new haircut or new clothes or whatever. Like, it's typically an event that would trigger it. But it's not something that we typically go through the day thinking about until it's pushed on us. So the early 2000s, there was the whole metrosexual thing, and it became a joke because it's like, all you're doing is you're giving a name to guys who take a bath. That's literally all you're doing is you're giving a name, another name for men who bathe themselves and can take care of their skin. So we had, it was these things of like, these standards were always there in the back of a lot of guys' heads. No matter how secure you are, it was, am I doing the right thing as a man, right? But anyway, so when it comes to the beauty issue, it's going to the gym, eating, trying to look right, the same. But again, it's going to be one of those things that's triggered by a life event. Like, I'm newly single. I'm going to go out there and do these things. No one looks at a man and says, man, he's really showing his age, or he's past his prime. The time that they talk about past their prime is, you're talking about sports, like your athleticism. But there's never a moment where somebody's like, oh gosh, that guy's 70. Or that guy's 50. I could have sworn he was 70, man. He really let himself go. Unless you're talking about somebody who used to be a former athlete. But if it's a regular ass guy, you can be skinny, you can be overweight, you can have muscles, you can have dimples, you can have facial hair, whatever. You're going to find somebody that's attracted to you in a lot of cases. And in a lot of cases, it's because they may be attracted to something that you're not even caring about. You don't even focus on. But I would say to this day, there is still that issue of men are not judged the same way as women are with respect to outward appearance, unless you're a complete piece of garbage. Then it's all fair. So if you're somebody who harasses women, says racist stuff, whatever, not that I'm okay with body shaming, but I understand when somebody goes for the low hanging fruit, when when your orange tan doesn't show up in your mugshot.
I knew you were going to go there.
But even then, people would look at Trump, and I've seen people that are part of that cult, and they say that he's a handsome man, or he's a good looking man. I am someone who sees his, because again, there's somebody for everybody. The beauty is going to be based on the person who's looking at the object, the person, the thing. I'm like, no, I see other things that make him an ugly person.
Yeah. With
But
such a
if you're into that,
profoundly horrible human being, I literally do not care. My eyes don't even see it. I don't even care what he looks like with such a horrible human being. But I guess, like we were saying a while ago, it does take a certain maturity, maybe age, maybe some life experience to get to the point where you genuinely do notice and put more weight on the inside than the outside, even for
Mhm.
yourself, but also for everybody around you. And it is sick that kind of this stuff, this sort of propaganda, all of this does target young people, teenagers, and young adults way more than it targets us. Honestly, at this point, I think they don't care about us anymore. We are out of the target range for what they're trying to accomplish, right?
Oh, most definitely. You did remind
Absolutely.
me of something that changed here. I've never watched, and this is not a flex. This is not like, oh, look at me. I've never watched The Bachelor.
Mhm.
So that game show, dating show, whatever you want to call it, it's been on forever. And I was watching the morning news and like, oh, The Bachelor is finally going to get its first senior. And I was thinking like, oh, okay, this is interesting. And they made it a point because they're saying Bachelor, it was going to be a guy. And I thought it was interesting that rather than going with a female contestant first, that's
Oh,
vying for 20, 20 or 25 guys, right? Here's an older male, I think he's in his 70s, and there are 25 women that are going to vie for his heart. And I'm thinking to myself, they wouldn't do this. I mean, they will eventually, but I could not see ABC or the producers of the show going with a woman first as, that we're going to do a golden bachelorette. I couldn't see them doing that.
yeah, they'd
Because
have
of the
to test the waters on the easy version first.
exactly. So you got to have it on easy setting and see what kind of audience that this, and that was the whole thing of like, oh my gosh, there's this man, he's in his 70s and his wife just died a few years ago. Oh my gosh, he's so handsome. He's so this, he's so that. Whereas I know in my heart that if they had started with the Golden Bachelorette, the issue would be like, oh, why is she looking for a man? She should be worried about her grandkids. She should be doing. So I would say those ideas, those concepts on womanhood, on manhood, masculinity, and femininity still persists to where there's a lot of shit guys can get away with that women and women, excuse me, female presenting women are going to be raked over the coals over because they didn't do their toenails that day.
Oh yeah.
Oh, I've seen weird reactions like, oh, she's beautiful, but gosh, she didn't get a pedicure. Like, dude, look at yourself. Please look at yourself.
Yeah. Online, especially, you see that stuff all the time. It's hilarious.
Oh my
It's
God.
so hilarious. Unless you don't know any better and take it seriously, in which case it's tragic and horrible and painful.
She'd be prettier if it weren't for her nose.
Yes. It is, however, interesting that you were talking about how they started with the easy mode. However, they did have to start one that had like a wholesome backstory, right? It was one who was married and his wife passed away. It's not some 70-year-old guy who they can just say, oh, you know what? He never married because he's like a raving misogynist. No woman would ever date him.
I don't know. You'd have an interesting show. You'd have a show.
I might start watching that thing at that point.
Okay,
then his sugar baby shows up halfway through the season.
Yeah,
I would actually be interested in seeing everyone be of that age. Like I think that would be more fascinating to me.
Wait, hang on. Are the contestants not the same age?
No, the contestants are supposed to be all women, is like senior citizens.
Okay. So roughly they're going to be in that age.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't specify. Yeah, it's an older gentleman and older women that are going to be.
Okay, I just assumed it's America, so it was Hugh Hefner.
No, I just assumed it had to be older women as well, because if you're just giving me a show about a 70-year-old and all the women are 20, that's too close to real life for my taste. I can just look out the window.
And that's exactly why I expected it, because that is easy mode. This guy is a billionaire. These girls are 18.
Oh gosh, they would totally do that show.
You both bring up an important point, because even then you throw in age, it's a lot more acceptable. At least
it is.
For the most part. if you
I
have an
wouldn't be
older man,
surprised if that exists already in some form.
it's I don't know, it's creepy. But but if it were, let's just say flipped it. It's a 70-year-old woman, a objectively good-looking person. She's got a nice backstory, all these things. You still get those things about like, oh my gosh, she's got grandkids. She should be baking cookies. She should be doing this. And I'd be sitting there like, look, Nana wants to get her freak on. Okay. Let Nana get her freak on. And then you'll find out that, Nana had the 25 young men couldn't keep up with Nana. And then her entire family has to hear about it.
I love how you're
That's the
writing
show I
this
wanna
script. That's yeah. I mean,
I want to see how Stella got her groove back. The reality show. I think that would be
How Stella got her
amazing.
groove back and broke her hip.
Yeah. See, that'd be great.
and others, several others. Oh, that's fantastic. Write that show. I want to see it.
I'm sure somebody's working on it.
Well, they're going to find some way around the writer's strike.
So
They're gonna
coming back to the Cabinets of Curiosity episode, I want to talk about the thing.
Talking about.
I want to talk about the thing I didn't like on the second viewing, and that's the ending.
Okay.
It's the ending. I don't like that she. Okay, I shouldn't say I don't like. I'm okay with this ending. I just feel there's a better ending. The idea of her going into the coworkers and wearing the different clothes and all that stuff we talked about is fine. It just doesn't. It's not amazing to me. Like, I think if she saw a transformation like in the mirror in her mind, when she looks at herself, she sees a transformation. But in reality, she's the red peeling monster.
Gosh.
If she had walked into the bank and was like pulling off her skin, that would mean so much more to me, because they would completely reject her. Right. And so where they accepted her as herself before all of this, I would bring it back to the monster she's become and how they don't want anything to do with that, because why would you? Right. And I just feel this goes back to my own preconceptions of what I think horror anthologies should be. I don't like that she gets to live happily ever after.
Oh, she doesn't. She doesn't. Well, absolutely not. There's that final look that makes it for me. That final elongated moment where they're laughing around her and she's laughing, and then she stares into the camera, and then she's laughing, and then she stares into the camera. James, she is not having a happy ever after. That is the face of somebody who just realized, shit, I'm in this now and I cannot get out anymore. I think actually love that ending.
I think it's more, I don't like that she lives.
Oh, well, yeah, that's okay.
But no, I don't know. I would prefer the monster. Like, I get the ending that we got, and I'm okay with it. I'd really rather, because all of the rejection is in her head, I would love for it to come back that all of the acceptance is in her head when no one else will give her any now. There you go.
Cinematically, I'm with you. I like your ending more. It fits, it works conceptually in terms of the ideology of the episode. I have to disagree. I think they did it right, because the end result of conforming does not actually make you a monster. It makes you socially acceptable. That's the brutal part of it. That's the horror. That as much as we rant and rave and hate on this stuff, and we form our own communities outside of it, conforming does not make you a monster. It gets you success. It works. It actually does. I'm not advertising this. I'm not saying it's a good thing. I'm saying practically in real life, that is what happens. There's no moment at the end where these people end up regretting their choices. These ladder climbers that we have in our own in publishing industry, these people who only care about the outside, these people who only talk to people who can give them opportunities. We want to believe deep down inside that the end of their story is that they become a monster, and that's not true. The end of their story is that they become incredibly successful. Hopefully with some sort of inner realization that that's not what they actually wanted. which is what I read on her face at the end. But yeah, it works. That's the problem. That's the bitch of it. It actually works.
That's
And
pretty
it's
great.
fun.
I'll admit it.
All right.
Sorry.
No, don't be sorry. That's why we're here. But I also feel like really fast. I feel like it's interesting how we want different things from this as well. I think that in itself just hits all of this, like individualism versus all three of us agreeing. So Don, go ahead, give us something totally different. Tell us we're both wrong.
No.
kidding.
It's not that. When that comes, I will definitely shout it from the rooftops. But I like to play around, and I was scrolling through my notes and looking at the stuff, and I played around with the whole inside versus outside aspect, right? If we're looking at her as being being a taxidermist, she did the thing with the duck. She did the thing with her husband as far as taking his insides out and filling them in. What I saw, at least in that last little bit, where you've got that uncomfortable, like minute-long moment where she's just looking at the camera. You're looking at her on the screen, and her face has these subtle changes. These subtle emotional changes where is it fear? Is it confusion? Is it joy? Is it, is it terror? Like, what is going on with her? And what I grasp from it, from my viewing, from my observation, is that she's been in conflict this entire time, and now it's being represented with this outward display because there's nothing left on the inside. So there's, I guess, a little part of her old self is remaining and is being extracted. And you have her looking at the screen, almost crying out like, maybe this isn't what I wanted. I feel better, but I don't feel whole. Just like any time that you change for somebody, because she's not changing for herself. I mean, she offers the idea that she is changing for herself, but she's changing to be part of something that she doesn't really need to be part of. This isn't something that's going to advance her career. This is something that's going to get her better education. This is just simply social status, which social status means nothing in the long run. It's just simply, it's a temporary fix to whatever issue that you're having, issue that you feel. Like, I feel sad. Here are some friends around. I like being around people. These people make me happy. I feel better. Boom. And then you go back to the next day feeling the same way. Like, I feel crappy. I don't feel good. Like, what happens to her after she's been accepted in this group? Like, she's not going to take them to her house. I mean, I can't imagine her saying like, "Hey, have any of you met my husband?" I don't see this paying off in the long run for her. Just like changing yourself isn't going to pay off for you, because you lose time and you lose a part of yourself trying to please others or just trying to be like other people. It's not something that is good for the long term.
Yep. And
well, if she thought about the long term, she wouldn't have killed her husband.
It is something that we all need to remember, that when we die, they're not going to like print out relevant statistics on our tombstones, like how many points we scored with the people that we were trying to impress. All of that is gone anyway, so it's ridiculous to try to make such a huge deal out of it now, like it becomes your whole entire life to accomplish just that.
I mean, my gravestone is going to have my most successful tweet and how many likes and shares.
Have you ever gone viral?
Have I what? I'm sorry.
Have you ever gone viral?
No, I don't think so.
Me neither.
I think that makes it funnier though, right? Like maybe I had like 200 likes and I was super excited because I normally get 3.
Yep, that's going to be perfect.
I mean, that is a big jump up. That is a big jump up from 3 likes.
Who am I kidding? No one likes any of my stuff. Anyways.
No, that's me on 3 different accounts. That's what it is.
Oh, that's adorable.
See, I have
That's
the
so
perfect husband too.
supportive.
It
Oh.
would be if James followed my other accounts, but he won't. He's afraid to.
Ooh, drama.
Everybody gets one. That's it. No.
Okay, Spider-Man.
Oh boy. Anyway, yeah, I don't have anything left in my notes for this. Do either of you have anything that we haven't hit?
Just what I forgot to say at the start, which is
Yeah.
that we got this episode courtesy of Anna Lily Amarpour, and
Mhm.
the teleplay was written by Haley Boston, and it's based on a webcomic by Emily Carroll. So that's what I wanted to shout out the team.
Excellent.
And I got nothing, so.
This concludes another episode of the Necronama.com. Join us next time when we look at Cabinet of Curiosities, Episode 5, Pickman's Model.